I always wondered why my best friend Chloe insisted on handling every detail of our anniversary party, down to the exact placement of the projector screen. Now, watching 200 of our closest friends and family members gasp in horror at the slideshow I'd prepared, frame after frame of my husband Alex tangled in Chloe's arms, everything made perfect sense. My supposed best friend of 12 years had orchestrated the perfect stage for what she thought would be my quiet humiliation. Instead, she'd given me the perfect venue for their very public destruction. My name is Jane Morrison, and until 6 months ago, I believed I was living the life every woman dreams of. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. At 34, I was the creative director of Meridian Marketing, one of the city's most prestigious advertising agencies. My corner office overlooked the harbor, and my campaigns had won 3 industry awards in the past 2 years alone. Success had always come naturally to me, perhaps too naturally, as I'd later discover. Our home in Beacon Hill was a restored Victorian that Alex and I had spent 3 years renovating. Every room told a story of our supposed partnership: the kitchen where we'd hosted countless dinner parties, the library where Alex would review his architectural plans while I worked on campaign concepts, the master bedroom with its bay window, where we'd drink coffee every Sunday morning, planning our future. Alex Morrison, my husband of 8 years, together for 10, was everything a woman could want on paper. At 36, he was a successful architect with his own firm, Morrison and Associates. Tall, with sandy brown hair that he kept perfectly styled, and green eyes that had made me fall in love with him during our college years at Boston University. He was charming, ambitious, and had a way of making everyone in a room feel like they were the most important person there. That charm, I'd later learn, was both his greatest asset and his most dangerous weapon. We were, by all accounts, the golden couple of our social circle. The Morrisons who threw the best dinner parties, took the most enviable vacations, and seemed to have perfected the art of modern marriage. Our friends often joked that we made them believe in true love again. The irony of that statement would become crystal clear soon enough. Alex's architectural firm was thriving. He'd recently landed a contract to design a luxury resort in Martha's Vineyard, a project that would cement his reputation as one of New England's premier architects. We'd celebrated with champagne in our garden, surrounded by the roses he'd surprised me with for our last anniversary. To the woman who makes everything possible, he'd toasted, his eyes locked on mine with what I believed was genuine love. My own career was reaching new heights. Meridian Marketing had just signed a contract with a major tech company, and I was leading the team developing their global brand strategy. The long hours were worth it. We were building something together, Alex and I, a life that seemed destined for even greater success. Chloe Bennett had been my best friend since college, where we'd met in a comparative literature class during our sophomore year. She was everything I wasn't: spontaneous where I was calculated, artistic where I was strategic, free-spirited where I was driven. At 33, she worked as an event coordinator for Prestige Events, one of the city's most exclusive party planning companies. Her talent for creating magical experiences was legendary. She could transform any space into something extraordinary. Chloe was beautiful in that effortless way some women possess: long auburn hair that caught the light perfectly, hazel eyes that seemed to change color with her mood, and a laugh that could fill a room. She was the type of woman who could make conversation with anyone, who remembered everyone's birthday, and who always knew exactly what to say to make you feel better about your worst day. Our friendship had survived everything: my engagement to Alex, she'd been my maid of honor, career changes, family dramas, and the natural evolution that comes with growing up. We had standing dinner dates every Tuesday, shared a love of terrible reality TV shows, and had planned to take a girls' trip to Tuscany the following spring. She knew Alex almost as well as I did. They'd developed their own easy friendship over the years, bonding over their shared love of architecture and design. Alex often consulted her about aesthetic choices for his projects, and she'd helped us design the layout for our anniversary parties, holiday gatherings, and even my surprise 30th birthday celebration. Looking back now, I can see how naive I was to believe that the three of us had created something rare, a triangle of friendship and love without jealousy or competition. Alex often said that Chloe was like the sister he'd never had, and Chloe frequently joked that she was living vicariously through our perfect marriage until she found her own Prince Charming. We spent countless evenings together. Dinner parties where Chloe would regale us with stories from her latest celebrity events, weekend trips to our cottage in the Hamptons where Alex would sketch new designs while Chloe and I planned elaborate meals, quiet nights at home where we'd play board games and debate everything from politics to the best pizza toppings. Alex was affectionate with both of us in ways that seemed completely natural. He'd hug Chloe goodbye after dinner parties, they'd share inside jokes about architectural disasters they'd seen around the city, and he'd often take her side in our playful arguments. I found their easy friendship endearing rather than threatening. After all, I was secure in my marriage, confident in Alex's love, and trusted Chloe implicitly. Now, with the clarity that only comes from devastating betrayal, I can identify the moments I should have questioned. The way Alex's eyes would linger on Chloe when he thought I wasn't looking. How Chloe had started dressing more carefully for our casual dinners at home. The increasing frequency of her texts to Alex about work consultations that somehow always required in-person meetings. There were the Tuesday dinners that Chloe began canceling, always with perfectly reasonable excuses about client emergencies or family obligations. The way Alex started working late more often, specifically on the nights when I'd mentioned Chloe might stop by. How they'd both developed a sudden interest in the same obscure architectural documentary series, leading to lengthy discussions that seemed to exclude me entirely. But these signs, so obvious in retrospect, were easily explained away by a trusting wife and an unsuspecting friend. Alex was busy with his biggest project yet. Chloe was advancing in her career and taking on more high-profile clients. We were all successful, busy people living full lives. That some of those lives were being lived behind my back was a possibility. That simply never occurred to me. When our 8th wedding anniversary approached, Alex surprised me by suggesting we throw a party instead of taking our usual private trip. "Let's celebrate with everyone who's been part of our journey," he said, his arms around me as we stood in our kitchen. 8 years deserves a real celebration. I was touched by the gesture. Work had been demanding for both of us, and the idea of gathering our friends and family to celebrate our marriage felt like exactly what we needed. When Chloe immediately volunteered to handle all the planning details, I was grateful rather than suspicious. "You two focus on being the happy couple," she'd said with a smile that I now recognize held secrets. "Let me create something magical for you." And magical it would be, just not in the way any of us expected. The first crack in my perfect world appeared on a rainy Thursday evening in March, exactly 3 months before our anniversary party. I was working late at Meridian, putting finishing touches on a presentation for our tech client, when I realized I'd left my laptop charger at home. Alex was supposed to be at a site meeting for the Martha's Vineyard project, but when I called to ask him to grab the charger, his phone went straight to voicemail. I drove home through the downpour, my mind already focused on the presentation I needed to complete. Our Victorian house stood dark against the stormy sky, which struck me as odd since Alex usually left lights on when he worked late. I parked in our driveway and noticed something that made my stomach flutter with unease. Chloe's silver BMW was parked around the corner, partially hidden behind the Henderson's hedge. Chloe's car. On a Thursday night, when Alex was supposed to be working and she'd cancelled our Tuesday dinner claiming she was swamped with a wedding for 300 guests. I stood in the rain for a moment, my keys heavy in my hand, trying to construct an innocent explanation. Maybe she'd stopped by to discuss anniversary party details. Maybe Alex had come home early and they were planning some surprise element for the celebration. Maybe there was a perfectly logical reason why neither of them had mentioned this meeting to me. The house was silent when I entered through the front door. No voices from the kitchen where they might be reviewing party plans. No sounds from Alex's home office where he often spread out his architectural drawings. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel, it means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Just an unsettling quiet that seemed to press against my eardrums. I climbed the stairs to retrieve my charger, and that's when I heard it, muffled laughter coming from our bedroom. Alex's deep chuckle mixed with Chloe's distinctive giggle, the same laugh I'd heard countless times during our friendship. But there was something different about it now, something intimate and secretive that made my chest tighten. I should have burst through the door. I should have demanded explanations. Instead, I stood frozen on the landing, listening to the soft murmur of voices I couldn't quite make out. After what felt like hours but was probably only minutes, I heard movement, the creak of our bedroom floor, the sound of footsteps approaching the door. Panic flooded my system. I couldn't be caught eavesdropping in my own home, couldn't face whatever conversation would follow. So I did something that would later seem providential. I slipped into the guest bathroom and hid, my heart hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. Through the thin walls, I heard them in the hallway. Chloe's voice, lower than usual. "We have to be more careful. The anniversary party is only 3 months away." Alex's response chilled me to the bone. "After the party, everything changes. We just have to make it through the celebration, play our parts perfectly, and then we can stop pretending." Their footsteps faded as they walked downstairs, followed by the soft click of the front door closing. I remained in the bathroom for another 10 minutes, my legs too weak to support me, my mind struggling to process what I'd overheard. "Play our parts perfectly." The words echoed in my head as I finally made my way to our bedroom. Everything looked normal, the bed made with the precision Alex insisted upon, my jewelry box undisturbed on the dresser, the framed photo of our wedding day smiling back at me from the nightstand. But the room felt different, contaminated by secrets I wasn't supposed to know. I grabbed my laptop charger and left the house, driving back to the office in a daze. That night, I barely slept, analyzing every word of their brief conversation. Everything changes after the party. What did that mean? Were they planning to tell me something? Were they? No. I couldn't complete that thought. Not yet. The next few weeks became an exercise in careful observation. I began paying attention to details I'd previously ignored, cataloging small changes in behavior like a detective building a case I desperately hoped wouldn't hold up in court. Alex started showering immediately when he came home from work, a habit he'd never had before. He claimed the construction sites made him feel dirty, but his clothes never seemed particularly dusty. His phone, once carelessly left on counters and tables, now remained permanently attached to his person. When it buzzed with notifications, he'd check it with a quick, almost furtive glance before slipping it back into his pocket. Chloe's behavior shifted too, though more subtly. Our Tuesday dinners, once sacred and rarely cancelled, became increasingly sporadic. She always had compelling excuses, difficult clients, family emergencies, work deadlines that required her immediate attention. When we did manage to get together, she seemed distracted, checking her phone frequently and steering conversations away from Alex and our marriage. Most disturbing were the moments when all three of us were together. I began noticing glances between them, quick, meaningful looks that lasted a fraction of a second too long. They'd developed a strange rhythm of never being in the same room alone with me present, as if they'd silently agreed that maintaining their secret required avoiding intimate group conversations. The anniversary party planning became a particularly surreal experience. Chloe threw herself into the project with an enthusiasm that felt almost manic. She insisted on handling every detail personally, from the floral arrangements to the menu selection to the entertainment. Most notably, she was adamant about the venue's audiovisual setup. "We absolutely need a high-quality projection system," she declared during one of our planning sessions at her apartment. "I want to create a beautiful slideshow of your journey together, photos from college, your wedding, all your adventures. It'll be so romantic, displayed on that gorgeous wall in the ballroom." I remember feeling touched by her attention to sentimental details. Now I understand she was ensuring the technical infrastructure would be in place for what she thought would be her triumphant revelation, the moment she'd publicly claim my husband. While I stood helplessly by, the most chilling realization came during a dinner party we hosted 6 weeks before the anniversary. I was in the kitchen preparing dessert when I heard Alex and Chloe talking quietly on the back patio. Through the open window, their words carried clearly in the still evening air. "I can't wait much longer," Chloe said, her voice strained with emotion. "Watching her plan this party, seeing how happy she is. It's killing me." Alex's response was firm but tender. "Just a little longer, baby. After the anniversary, we'll tell her everything. She deserves to hear it properly, not rushed or angry. The party will be perfect, and then we can finally stop hiding." "Baby." He called her baby, the same endearment he'd whispered to me for 8 years. I stood at the kitchen sink, dessert plates trembling in my hands, as the final pieces of their betrayal clicked into place. They weren't planning to surprise me at the anniversary party, they were planning to wait until after it to destroy my life. The celebration Chloe was so carefully orchestrating wasn't meant to honor my marriage, it was meant to be its beautiful funeral. That night, after our guests left and Alex fell asleep beside me, I lay awake staring at the ceiling and making a decision that would change everything. If they wanted to use our anniversary party as the stage for their drama, I'd give them a performance they'd never forget, but first, I needed evidence. And I knew exactly how to get it. The grand ballroom at the Fairmont Harbor Hotel had never looked more beautiful. Chloe had outdone herself with the anniversary party decorations, cascading white orchids, twinkling fairy lights draped from the vaulted ceiling, and elegant round tables dressed in champagne-colored linens. 200 of our closest friends and family members filled the space, their laughter and conversation creating the perfect soundtrack for what everyone believed would be a celebration of enduring love. I stood near the entrance in my midnight blue silk dress, the one Alex had complimented when I'd tried it on 3 weeks ago, greeting guests with the radiant smile of a woman celebrating 8 years of marital bliss. Inside, my heart hammered with the anticipation of what was coming. The USB drive containing 3 months of carefully documented evidence sat hidden in my clutch purse, waiting for its moment. Alex looked devastatingly handsome in his charcoal gray suit, working the room with his characteristic charm. I watched him embrace old college friends, shake hands with business associates, and kiss the cheeks of elderly relatives. To everyone present, he was the picture of the devoted husband, attentive, loving, proud to be celebrating another year of marriage. with his beautiful wife, but I could see the subtle signs of his nervousness now that I knew what to look for. The way his hand trembled slightly when he lifted his champagne glass. How his eyes kept darting to Chloe, who was orchestrating the evening's events with military precision. The tight set of his jaw when he thought no one was watching. Chloe had positioned herself as the evening's master of ceremonies, a role that allowed her to control every aspect of the celebration's flow. She wore a stunning emerald green dress that complemented her auburn hair perfectly, and she moved through the room like a dancer, ensuring every detail was executed flawlessly. Several guests commented on what an amazing friend I had, how lucky I was to have someone who cared enough to plan such an elaborate celebration. Ladies and gentlemen, Chloe's voice rang out clearly as she took the microphone near the front of the room. If I could have your attention, please? We're about to begin the evening's special presentation. The room gradually quieted, guests turning their attention to the front where a large projection screen had been set up. The same screen Chloe had insisted was essential for the romantic slideshow she'd planned. My parents, who had flown in from Seattle, beamed with pride from their front row table. Alex's mother dabbed at her eyes with a tissue, already emotional at the prospect of reliving our love story through photographs. Jane and Alex, Chloe continued, her voice warm and filled with apparent affection, your love story has inspired all of us. Tonight, I wanted to create something special that captures the journey you've shared together. I felt Alex's hand slip into mine as we stood together near the screen, presenting a united front to our assembled loved ones. His palm was damp with perspiration, and I could feel his pulse racing through his wrist. He had no idea what was coming. This slideshow, Chloe announced with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes, tells the true story of relationships that matter most. The room lights dimmed, and the first image appeared on the screen. But instead of our college graduation photo or wedding pictures, the projection showed a crystal clear image of Alex and Chloe in a passionate embrace outside the Riverside Hotel downtown. The timestamp in the corner read March 15th, just 2 weeks after I'd overheard them in our bedroom. A collective gasp rose from the audience. Someone's champagne glass shattered against the marble floor. I felt Alex's hand go rigid in mine before he jerked it away as if I'd burned him, but this was only the beginning. The second image showed them entering what was clearly a hotel room together, Alex's hand intimately placed on the small of Chloe's back. The third captured them on the balcony of what I recognized as Chloe's apartment, her arms wrapped around his neck, both of them laughing as if sharing the most delicious secret. Oh my God, someone whispered loudly from the back of the room. The slideshow continued with methodical precision. Photos of stolen lunches at intimate restaurants across town. Images of them shopping together for what appeared to be lingerie at an upscale boutique. Video footage I'd captured from across the street showing them leaving her apartment building together at dawn, Alex clearly wearing the same clothes he'd worn to client meetings the night before. The room had fallen into complete silence except for the soft click of the slideshow advancing and the occasional muffled sob from shocked family members. I watched our guests' faces transform from confusion to understanding to horror as the true nature of my husband and best friend's relationship became undeniably clear. Alex stood frozen beside me, his face cycling through expressions of shock, panic, and desperate calculation. His mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air, but no words emerged. The confident architect who had charmed this very room just an hour ago had been reduced to a speechless, cornered animal. Chloe had gone completely white, her carefully applied makeup now stark against her pale skin. The microphone trembled in her hand as she stared at the screen in apparent disbelief. This wasn't the slideshow she'd prepared, wasn't the evening she'd orchestrated. Her perfect plan had been hijacked by someone who knew how to plan even better. The final image appeared on screen, a screenshot of text messages between them from just that morning. Alex's words were displayed for all to see. After tonight, we won't have to pretend anymore. I can't wait to start our real life together. Chloe's response, just think, this time tomorrow, she'll know everything and we'll finally be free. The silence in the ballroom was deafening. 200 people sat in stunned quiet, absorbing the magnitude of the betrayal they'd just witnessed. Wedding rings caught the light as hands covered shocked mouths. Several elderly relatives looked visibly ill. My sister Sarah's face was a mask of fury as she stared daggers at Alex. I took the microphone from Chloe's trembling hand with steady fingers, my voice carrying clearly through the sound system when I finally spoke. Thank you all for being here tonight to celebrate with us, I said, my tone remarkably calm considering the circumstances. I know this isn't quite the anniversary celebration you were expecting, but I felt it was important that everyone who loves us should know the truth about our relationships. I turned to look directly at Alex, whose face had gone from white to green. Darling, you mentioned wanting to start your real life. Well, congratulations, it starts right now. Then I looked at Chloe, whose emerald dress suddenly seemed far too bright under the ballroom lights. And Chloe, thank you for insisting on the high-quality projection system. You were absolutely right, some stories deserve to be displayed beautifully. The whispers started then, a low murmur of shocked conversation rippling through the crowd like a stone thrown into still water. Cell phones appeared as guests began documenting this catastrophic turn of events. Alex's business associates exchanged meaningful glances, already calculating the professional implications. Chloe's event planning colleagues looked mortified to be associated with this disaster. I set the microphone down on the nearest table and walked toward the ballroom exit, my head held high and my steps measured. Behind me, I could hear Alex finally finding his voice, calling my name with desperate urgency. Chloe's stilettos clicked frantically against the marble floor as she tried to follow me, but I didn't turn around. I had said everything that needed to be said, and shown everything that needed to be seen. The rest of their story, the explanations, the excuses, the desperate damage control would have to unfold without me. After all, I had a new life to start planning. And unlike them, I'd be building it on a foundation of truth. The hotel lobby felt like a sanctuary compared to the chaos I'd left behind in the ballroom. My heels clicked against the polished marble as I walked toward the exit, each step taking me further away from the wreckage of my old life and closer to whatever came next. The sounds from the ballroom, raised voices, scraping chairs, the general commotion of 200 people trying to process what they'd just witnessed, faded behind me like a receding nightmare. Jane, wait. Alex's voice echoed through the lobby, desperate and raw. I could hear his footsteps pounding against the floor as he chased after me, probably pushing past shocked guests and overturned chairs in his haste to catch up. I didn't turn around. Instead, I continued my measured pace toward the revolving doors that led to freedom, my clutch purse held firmly in my hand. Inside it, alongside the USB drive that had just destroyed 2 lives, was my phone, my credit cards, and the keys to the life I was about to reclaim. Please, just stop for a second. Let me explain. I finally turned to face him, my voice carrying across the spacious lobby with crystalline clarity. Alex skidded to a halt about 10 feet away, his face flushed and his usually perfect hair disheveled from running his hands through it. Behind him, I could see other guests beginning to spill out of the ballroom, drawn by the promise of witnessing the next act of this spectacular drama. What exactly would you like to explain, Alex? I asked, my tone conversational, almost curious. Would you like to explain how you've been sleeping with my best friend for months? How you've been lying to my face every single day? Or perhaps you'd like to explain how you were planning to wait until after our anniversary party, the party I helped pay for, by the way, to destroy our marriage? He opened his mouth, then closed it again, clearly struggling to find words that could possibly justify what everyone had just seen. The confident architect who gave presentations to boardrooms full of executives had been rendered speechless by his wife's calm questioning. We didn't want to hurt you, he finally managed, the words sounding hollow even to his own ears. You didn't want to hurt me? I repeated, a genuine smile playing at the corners of my mouth. How thoughtful. And tell me, darling, at what point in your months-long affair did you think I wouldn't be hurt? Was it when you were sneaking around behind my back? When you were lying about work meetings? Or was it when you were planning to humiliate me by ending our marriage right after I'd publicly celebrated it? Several hotel guests had stopped to watch our exchange, phones discreetly recording what was clearly a spectacular marital implosion. I noticed Mrs. Henderson from our neighborhood standing near the elevators, her mouth agape. By tomorrow morning, this conversation would be the talk of Beacon Hill. It wasn't supposed to happen like this, Alex said, taking a tentative step closer. We were going to tell you properly, privately. We were going to, but this is so much better, I interrupted, my voice bright with false enthusiasm. Now everyone knows at the same time. No need for awkward individual conversations or having to repeat your story. Very efficient, really. I'm sure Chloe appreciates your consideration for her time. At the mention of Chloe's name, Alex's face crumpled slightly. Jane, please. I know you're angry, and you have every right to be, but can we please discuss this somewhere private? People are watching. I looked around the lobby with exaggerated surprise, as if just noticing our audience. People are watching? How wonderful. I do hope they enjoyed the slideshow. Chloe put so much work into planning the perfect evening, it would be a shame if her efforts went unappreciated. That's when Chloe herself appeared, stumbling out of the ballroom on unsteady legs. Her emerald dress, so stunning an hour ago, now looked like a costume for a role she could no longer play. Her mascara had started to run, creating dark smudges beneath her eyes that made her look like a tragic actress in the final act of a particularly devastating play. Jane, she gasped, reaching toward me with trembling hands. I'm so sorry. I never wanted you to find out like this. I never wanted to hurt you. I stepped back smoothly, avoiding her touch as if she carried some contagious disease. You never wanted to hurt me? How fascinating. So when you were planning my anniversary party, you were actually trying to protect my feelings? When you were sleeping with my husband in our bed, you were being considerate of my emotional well-being? It wasn't in your bed, she said quickly, then immediately realized her mistake. I mean, we never. Oh, so you have standards? I asked with mock admiration. How noble. You'll steal my husband, but you won't do it on my Egyptian cotton sheets. Such integrity. Behind Chloe, more guests were emerging from the ballroom. I could see my parents, looking shell-shocked and confused. My sister Sarah appeared to be physically restraining herself from launching an attack on either Alex or Chloe. Alex's mother was being supported by his father, her face a mask of humiliation and disappointment. Ladies and gentlemen, I said, raising my voice so it would carry to our growing audience. I want to thank you all for coming tonight. I know this wasn't quite the celebration you were expecting, but I hope you'll agree that the truth is always worth celebrating, even when it's inconvenient. I reached into my clutch and pulled out my wedding ring, the 3-carat diamond solitaire that Alex had proposed with 8 years ago, the symbol of promises that had turned out to be as fake as everything else about our marriage. With deliberate slowness, I held it up so everyone could see. Alex, since you're so eager to start your real life, I thought I'd help you along. I placed the ring on the marble reception desk with a soft click that seemed to echo through the suddenly silent lobby. Consider this my wedding gift to you. And Chloe, you're free to begin your authentic relationship without any inconvenient legal entanglements. Alex stared at the ring as if it were a bomb that might explode. Jane, please don't do this. We can work through this. We can go to counseling, we can work through this. I laughed, the sound clear and genuinely amused. Oh, darling, I think you misunderstand. This isn't a problem to be solved. This is a solution to a problem I didn't even know I had. I turned to Chloe, who was now openly crying, her carefully applied makeup creating abstract art down her cheeks. And Chloe, thank you for showing me exactly who you really are. It's such a gift to see people clearly, don't you think? All these years, I thought I knew you. Turns out I was right, I just didn't realize how much I'd been underestimating your capacity for deception. The revolving door beckoned behind me, promising escape from this scene of beautiful destruction. But before I left, I had one final gesture to make. I opened my clutch and pulled out a business card, crisp white cardstock with elegant black lettering. This is my divorce attorney's information, I said, offering it to Alex with a serene smile. I took the liberty of scheduling you an appointment for Monday morning. 10 o'clock sharp. I'd suggest you don't be late. I believe punctuality will be very important to your future. Alex took the card with numb fingers, staring at it as if he couldn't quite comprehend what it represented. Oh, and one more thing, I added, my voice carrying that same bright, conversational tone I'd maintained throughout this entire exchange. I'll be staying at the Ritz-Carlton tonight. Not because I'm running away, but because I thought it would be inappropriate for me to go home and interrupt your celebration. After all, this is the night you've been planning for months. Enjoy it. With that, I turned and walked through the revolving door, leaving behind the ballroom full of shocked guests, the husband who had betrayed me, and the best friend who had orchestrated her own downfall. The cool evening air hit my face like a blessing, washing away the suffocating atmosphere of lies and deception. As I waited for the valet to bring my car, I could see Alex and Chloe through the hotel's floor-to-ceiling windows, still standing in the lobby like actors who had forgotten their lines. They were finally free to be together, just as they'd planned. They just hadn't anticipated that their freedom would come with such a spectacular price. The presidential suite at the Ritz-Carlton had never felt more like home than it did that night. I sat on the plush velvet sofa, still in my midnight blue dress, sipping champagne from a crystal flute while the city lights twinkled below me through floor-to-ceiling windows. My phone buzzed incessantly on the coffee table, calls from Alex, texts from Chloe, worried messages from family members, and what appeared to be congratulatory notes from friends who had witnessed my spectacular revelation. I ignored them all. Instead, I opened my laptop and began the methodical process of dismantling the life I'd shared with two people who had proven themselves unworthy of my trust. This wasn't an emotional response, it was a strategic withdrawal executed with the same precision I brought to my most complex marketing campaigns. First, the financial accounts. Alex and I had joint checking and savings accounts, a shared credit card, and investment portfolios managed through his financial advisor. With a few clicks, I transferred exactly half of everything into new accounts I'd opened 3 weeks ago under my maiden name. Not a penny more than I was legally entitled to, but not a penny less either. The shared credit card was more interesting. Alex's architectural firm had been charging project expenses to our personal account for months, expecting reimbursement that apparently never came. I documented every charge, every business dinner, every hotel stay that had been billed to our marriage while funding his affair. My divorce attorney would find these records very useful. Next, I contacted our joint insurance policies. Auto, home, health, all of them listed both Alex and me as beneficiaries. By morning, I would be removed from anything that might financially benefit him, and he would be removed from anything that might benefit me. Clean breaks were always preferable to messy entanglements. The house in Beacon Hill presented a more complex challenge. We'd purchased it together, both names on the deed, both of us responsible for the mortgage. But I'd made the down payment from my inheritance when my grandmother passed away 5 years ago. My lawyer had advised me to document this thoroughly, and I'd spent the past month gathering bank statements and legal records that proved the property's foundation, literally and figuratively, rested on my family's money. At 2 a.m., my phone rang with a call from my sister Sarah. I finally answered, knowing she wouldn't stop until she reached me. "Are you okay?" she asked without preamble, her voice tight with concern and barely contained fury. "I'm perfect," I replied, and meant it. "How are Alex and Chloe?" "Gone. They left about an hour after you did." "But Jane, the whole thing, everyone's talking about it. Social media is exploding. Someone recorded parts of the slideshow and, good," I said simply. "Let them talk." Sarah was quiet for a moment. "What are you going to do now?" I looked around the elegant hotel suite, then down at my laptop screen where I'd been systematically severing every connection between my old life and my new one. "I'm going to disappear for a while. Let the lawyers handle the details, let the gossip burn itself out, and figure out who I want to be now that I'm not Mrs. Alex Morrison." "Disappear? What does that mean?" "It means I'm taking a leave of absence from Meridian. I have enough vacation time saved up to last 3 months, and my boss owes me several favors. It means I'm not going home to Beacon Hill. Alex can live there with the ghosts of his lies until the lawyers sort out who gets what. And it means I'm going to let them wonder where I am and what I'm planning while I actually do the planning." Over the next few days, I became a ghost in my own life. I arranged for a moving company to pack my personal belongings from the house while Alex was at work, leaving behind everything that connected me to our shared history. Wedding photos, gifts from Chloe, furniture we'd chosen together, all of it could stay in the museum of our failed marriage. I rented a furnished apartment in Cambridge under my maiden name, Jane Sullivan. It was smaller than my walk-in closet in Beacon Hill, but it had something my old home lacked: complete privacy. No neighbors who knew my story, no familiar places that held memories of betrayal, no chance of running into anyone from my previous life. My disappearance from social circles was strategic and complete. I declined every invitation, ignored every attempt at contact, and let my absence speak louder than any explanation could. People who had witnessed the anniversary party disaster were dying to know how I was handling the aftermath, but I gave them nothing to speculate about. The speculation, however, was extraordinary. Within a week, rumors were flying about my whereabouts and my state of mind. Some said I'd had a breakdown and been hospitalized. Others claimed I'd fled the country to escape the humiliation. A few suggested I was planning my own revenge, though none of them imagined the scope of what was actually coming. Alex's attempts to reach me grew increasingly desperate. He showed up at Meridian, only to be told I was on extended leave with no return date scheduled. He tried calling my parents, who informed him they had no idea where I was and wouldn't tell him if they did. He even contacted my lawyer, hoping to start settlement negotiations, but was told his estranged wife was not ready to discuss terms. Chloe's approach was different but equally futile. She sent flowers to my old office with notes begging for forgiveness. She contacted mutual friends, hoping someone could serve as an intermediary. She even tried reaching out through professional networks, claiming she needed to discuss the fallout from events that had damaged her business reputation, but I remained invisible, a ghost haunting the edges of their guilty consciences while I prepared for the next phase of their education. They thought the anniversary party was my revenge, a moment of public humiliation that satisfied my need for justice. They had no idea that the slideshow was just the opening act. My Cambridge apartment became a war room of meticulous planning. The dining table, meant for intimate meals, now held 3 laptops, multiple phones, stacks of documents, and a detailed timeline I'd created to track every move Alex and Chloe made. I'd transformed from a betrayed wife into something far more dangerous, a strategic opponent with unlimited time, considerable resources, and nothing left to lose. The first week of my disappearance was spent studying my targets like a behavioral scientist. I hired Marcus Webb, a private investigator recommended by my divorce attorney, who specialized in what he diplomatically called complex marital situations. Marcus was a former FBI agent turned freelancer, and his approach to gathering intelligence was both thorough and creative. "Your husband is a creature of habit," Marcus reported during our first meeting at a discreet coffee shop in downtown Boston. "Same gym every morning at 6 a.m., same route to work, same lunch spot 3 days a week. He's also drinking more than Usual his credit card shows frequent purchases at upscale bars near his office. I made careful notes as Marcus continued his briefing. Alex's predictability, once a comfortable aspect of our marriage, was now his greatest vulnerability. And the friend? I asked. Chloe Bennett is more erratic. Her event planning business has taken a significant hit since the anniversary party incident. 3 clients have canceled major events, and industry contacts are avoiding her calls. She's been staying at various hotels around the city rather than her apartment, probably trying to avoid media attention. This was useful information. Chloe's professional reputation was built on discretion and trust. Wealthy clients hired her because she could manage their private events without creating scandals. Now she was the scandal, and her business was hemorrhaging. Accordingly, over the following days, I established what I called my intelligence network, a web of carefully cultivated contacts who could provide me with real-time information about Alex and Chloe's movements, financial situations, and professional relationships. My first recruit was Maria Santos, the housekeeper who had worked for Alex and me for 3 years. Maria had always been observant and discreet, qualities that made her invaluable for my current purposes. I arranged to meet her at a small cafe in her neighborhood. "Mrs. Morrison," she said, her face lighting up when she saw me. "I am so sorry about what happened. Such terrible people, to do this to you." "Thank you, Maria. I was wondering if you might be willing to help me with something." I slid an envelope across the table containing $5,000 in cash. "I need to know what's happening in my house. Who comes and goes, what condition things are in, anything unusual." Maria's eyes widened at the money, but her expression remained thoughtful. "Mr. Alex, he is not taking care of the house. Dirty dishes everywhere, empty bottles. And that woman, she comes by sometimes, but they fight a lot now. Would you be willing to keep me informed about these visits? Maybe take some photos if you see anything interesting?" Maria nodded firmly. "That man, he owes me 2 weeks' pay. And after what he did to you. Yes, I will help." My second key recruit was Bobby Chen, Alex's former junior partner at Morrison & Associates. Bobby had been laid off 6 months ago during what Alex claimed were temporary budget cuts, but I suspected the real reason was Alex's need to hide his questionable business practices from someone ethical enough to report them. And Bobby met me at a wine bar in Back Bay, his resentment toward Alex immediately apparent. "He fired me right before landing the Martha's Vineyard project," Bobby said bitterly. "Claimed it was temporary, but he's already hired someone else. Someone who asks fewer questions about billing practices." "What kind of billing practices?" I asked, though I suspected I already knew. "Charging personal expenses to client accounts, inflating project costs, claiming hours for work that was never completed." I tried to address it internally, but Alex made it clear my concerns weren't welcome. I leaned forward, interested. "Do you have documentation of these practices?" Bobby smiled grimly. "I kept copies of everything. Call it insurance against exactly this kind of situation." Within 2 weeks, I had cultivated a network of informants that would have impressed any intelligence agency. Maria provided household intelligence. Bobby offered insights into Alex's professional vulnerabilities. A bartender at Alex's favorite after-work spot reported on his drinking habits and conversations. A receptionist at Chloe's office building tracked her erratic schedule and increasingly desperate client meetings. But information gathering was only the foundation. The real work involved understanding my target's psychological profiles and identifying the precise pressure points that would cause maximum damage with minimal effort. Alex's greatest fear was professional failure. His identity was completely wrapped up in his success as an architect, his reputation in the industry, and his standing among Boston's social elite. He'd built his entire self-worth on external validation, which made him exceptionally vulnerable to reputation attacks. Chloe's weakness was different but equally exploitable. She desperately needed to be liked, to be seen as sophisticated and successful. Her event planning business wasn't just her career, it was her identity as someone who could create magic for other people's most important moments. Destroying that reputation would destroy her sense of self. I spent long evenings in my Cambridge apartment, sipping wine and studying their psychological profiles like a chess master analyzing potential moves. Every weakness they'd revealed during our years of friendship was now a weapon I could use against them. The irony wasn't lost on me that their betrayal had revealed not just their true characters, but also capabilities within myself I'd never known existed. The marketing executive who had once channeled her strategic thinking into selling products was now using those same skills to sell a much more personal narrative, the complete destruction of 2 lives. By the end of my second week in exile, I had everything I needed to begin phase 2 of their education. The foundation was laid, the network was operational, and my targets were beginning to crack under the pressure of not knowing what I was planning. It was time to remind them that the woman they'd betrayed wasn't just smart and successful, she was patient, methodical, and absolutely committed to seeing justice done. 3 weeks into my strategic disappearance, I received the most valuable intelligence yet from an unexpected source. Yasmin Rodriguez, a senior editor at Boston Architecture Today, had been following the fallout from my anniversary party with professional interest. The architectural community was small, and scandals traveled fast. I knew Alex professionally before all this happened, Yasmin explained over lunch at an upscale restaurant in downtown Boston. When the anniversary party story started circulating, I did some digging into his recent projects. What I found was concerning. She slid a manila folder across the table with the discretion of a spy passing state secrets. Building permits filed under false information. Inspection reports that don't match the actual construction. And the Martha's Vineyard project, there are some serious environmental violations that somehow got overlooked during the approval process. I studied the documents with growing amazement. Alex hadn't just been cheating on me personally, he'd been cheating professionally for years. The prestigious reputation he'd built was largely based on cutting corners, bribing inspectors, and falsifying documents. His success was as fake as our marriage. Why are you showing me this? I asked. Yasmin's smile was sharp. Because I believe in accountability. And because your husband personally cost me a story last year when he threatened to pull advertising. If we published an exposé on corrupt practices in luxury development, consider this payback. The environmental violations were particularly damaging. Alex's Martha's Vineyard Resort was being built on protected wetlands, with construction methods that violated both state and federal environmental laws. The permits had been approved through what appeared to be deliberate misrepresentation of the ecological impact studies. I spent the next week infiltrating Alex's professional world with the thoroughness of an undercover operative. Posing as a potential client interested in sustainable luxury development, I attended industry networking events where Alex's colleagues spoke freely about practices they assumed I wouldn't understand. At a green building conference at the Boston Convention Center, I struck up conversations with environmental consultants who had worked on projects similar to Alex's Martha's Vineyard Resort. The information they shared, thinking they were impressing a potential client, painted a picture of systematic fraud that went far beyond anything I'd imagined. Morrison's projects always seemed to get approved faster than anyone else's, confided Dr. Michael Torres, an environmental impact specialist. His ecological assessments are optimistic, let's say. But somehow they always pass regulatory review. Meanwhile, my intelligence network was providing daily updates on Alex and Chloe's deteriorating relationship. Maria reported that their arguments at the house were becoming more frequent and more vicious. The fairy tale romance that had destroyed my marriage was revealing itself to be built on mutual selfishness rather than genuine love. They fight about money mostly, Maria texted me along with photos of broken dishes and overturned furniture. She wants him to pay for her lost business clients. He says it's not his fault people found out about them. Bobby Chin proved even more valuable as he infiltrated Alex's current business operations. Using his architectural contacts, Bobby secured a consulting position with a firm that was bidding against Morrison and Associates for several major projects. This gave him access to industry gossip and competitive intelligence that revealed the full scope of Alex's professional vulnerabilities. Word is spreading about the environmental violations, Bobby reported during one of our weekly meetings. The Martha's Vineyard project is under review by the State Environmental Protection Agency. If they discover the extent of the falsified documents, Alex could face criminal charges. But the most devastating intelligence came from Chloe's professional sphere. I'd hired a freelance event coordinator named Lionel Matthews to pose as a potential client for a high-profile wedding. Lionel was gay, charming, and exactly the type of client Chloe would normally cultivate carefully. His mission was to gather information about her current business situation and client relationships. She's desperate, Lionel reported after his consultation meeting with Chloe. 3 major clients have cancelled, citing reputational concerns. Her staff is jumping ship. I counted at least 4 job postings for event coordinators at competing firms that match her employees' exact qualifications. More importantly, Lionel discovered that Chloe was facing serious financial pressures. Her business operated on thin margins, requiring a constant flow of high-paying clients to cover her overhead costs. The anniversary party scandal had dried up that flow almost completely. She offered me a 40% discount on her normal rates, Lionel continued. And she kept mentioning how discretion was her highest priority, which tells me other clients have complained about her lack of discretion in her personal life. I also learned that Chloe had been reaching out to mutual friends, trying to gauge whether anyone had information about my whereabouts or intentions. Her inquiries revealed a growing paranoia about what I might be planning next. The picture emerging from 3 weeks of systematic intelligence gathering was better than I'd hoped. Alex's professional reputation was built on fraud that could result in criminal prosecution. Chloe's business was collapsing under the weight of lost clients and industry gossip. Their relationship was deteriorating as financial pressures mounted and the reality of their situation became clear, but most importantly, both of them were completely in the dark about the scope of information I'd gathered. They knew I was angry, but they had no idea I'd discovered Alex's professional fraud or that I was systematically documenting Chloe's business collapse. As I sat in my Cambridge apartment that evening, reviewing intelligence reports and planning my next moves, I felt a deep satisfaction that had nothing to do with revenge and everything to do with justice. They'd thought they were clever, manipulating me while pursuing their affair. But they'd forgotten that the woman they'd betrayed was a strategic thinker who'd built her career on understanding how to gather information, identify weaknesses, and execute complex plans. The intelligence gathering phase was nearly complete. Soon, it would be time to move from observation to action, from planning to execution. Alex and Chloe were about to learn that betraying someone who specialized in strategic warfare was the biggest mistake of their lives. 1 month after the anniversary party disaster, I decided it was time to begin my campaign in earnest. The intelligence gathering had been thorough, the network was operational, and my targets had grown complacent in my absence. They'd begun to believe that my dramatic revelation was the extent of my response, a moment of justified anger that would fade into bitter acceptance. They were about to learn how wrong they were. My first strike was surgical in its precision. Using the environmental violation documents Yasmin had provided, I crafted an anonymous tip to the Massachusetts Environmental Protection Agency. The information was presented as coming from a concerned citizen who had noticed irregularities during construction of the Martha's Vineyard Resort project. I didn't just send a simple complaint. Instead, I created a comprehensive dossier that included photographs of the construction site, copies of the falsified environmental impact studies, and a detailed timeline showing when the violations had occurred. The package was professional, thorough, and impossible to ignore. Within 48 hours, the State Environmental Agency launched a formal investigation into Morrison and Associates. The timing was perfect. Alex had been scheduled to attend a ribbon-cutting ceremony for another project that week, but instead found himself answering questions from regulatory investigators. Bobby Chen, still embedded in the architectural community, reported that news of the investigation was spreading through industry circles like wildfire. Every firm that's ever competed against Alex for a project is suddenly very interested in his business practices, Bobby texted me. People are asking questions about how he always seemed to get permits approved so quickly. My second strike targeted Chloe's remaining client base with equal precision. I discovered through Lionel's reconnaissance that she was desperately trying to land a contract for the Pemberton Walsh wedding, a society event that could single-handedly salvage her business reputation. The bride's family was old Boston money, exactly the type of client Chloe needed to rebuild her credibility. I arranged for Mrs. Eleanor Pemberton Walsh to receive an anonymous package containing printouts of social media posts about the anniversary party incident, along with news articles that had covered the scandal. The package included a thoughtful note expressing concern that the family might not be aware of their event coordinator's recent publicity issues. The effect was immediate. Lionel, who had maintained his cover as a potential client, reported that Chloe received a cancellation call that same afternoon. The conversation, which he overheard while in her office for a follow-up meeting, was devastating. Mrs. Pemberton Walsh was very polite but firm, Lionel told me later. She said they'd decided to go with someone whose personal life wouldn't overshadow their daughter's special day. Chloe actually started crying after she hung up the phone. But my most effective early strike was also the most subtle. I began seeding doubts about Alex and Chloe's relationship within their social circles, using the intelligence I'd gathered about their increasingly volatile domestic situation. I started with Sarah Blackwood, a mutual friend who had been at the anniversary party and witnessed the slideshow revelation. Sarah had always been a gossip, and I knew she was dying to discuss the situation with someone who had inside information. I arranged to accidentally encounter Sarah at our old yoga studio, timing my visit to coincide with her regular Tuesday morning class. My appearance after weeks of absence created exactly the dramatic moment I'd hoped for. Jane. Sarah gasped, nearly dropping her yoga mat. Oh my God, how are you? We've all been so worried. Where have you been? I've been taking some time to process everything, I replied with carefully calibrated vulnerability. It's been difficult, you know? Not just the affair, but learning about all the other lies. Sarah's eyes lit up with curiosity. Other lies? I allowed myself to look hesitant, as if debating whether to confide in her. I probably shouldn't say anything, but, well, they're fighting constantly now. Alex is facing some serious professional problems, and Chloe's business is struggling. I guess when the excitement of sneaking around ended, they discovered they don't actually like each other very much. The conversation continued for 20 minutes, with me carefully dropping hints about financial pressures, professional investigations, and domestic violence, all technically true, though I presented them in ways that suggested more than I actually said. By that afternoon, Sarah had called at least 6 mutual friends to share this exclusive information about Alex and Chloe's deteriorating relationship. The gossip network that had once buzzed with speculation about my whereabouts was now focused on the spectacular implosion of the couple who had destroyed my marriage to be together. The beauty of these early strikes was their apparent disconnection from each other. Alex facing an environmental investigation seemed unrelated to Chloe losing wedding clients. The rumors about their relationship problems appeared to be natural consequences of the stress they were under, not deliberate sabotage, Maria continued, providing household intelligence that confirmed the effectiveness of my campaign. Mr. Alex is drinking more, she reported. He stays up late making phone calls about lawyers and investigators. And that woman, she doesn't come by as much anymore. When she does, they yell about money and blame each other for their problems. Most satisfying was learning that both Alex and Chloe were beginning to suspect that their troubles weren't coincidental. Alex had started questioning how the environmental agency had obtained such detailed information about his permit violations. Chloe was baffled by how the Pemberton Walsh family had learned about the anniversary party scandal so quickly, but they were looking in the wrong directions. Alex suspected competing architectural firms of sabotaging him. Chloe blamed disgruntled former employees for spreading rumors about her business. Neither of them considered that the wife they'd betrayed might be systematically dismantling their lives with the same strategic precision she'd once applied to advertising campaigns. The first strikes had achieved their objectives perfectly. Alex and Chloe were under pressure, their relationship was cracking, and their professional reputations were beginning to crumble. But more importantly, they were starting to understand that their troubles were just beginning. The anniversary party slideshow had been a public humiliation designed to shock and embarrass them. These early strikes were something far more dangerous, a systematic campaign designed to destroy their lives piece by piece, leaving them wondering when the next blow would fall and from which direction it would come. 6 weeks after the anniversary party, the Massachusetts Environmental Protection Agency concluded their investigation into Morrison and Associates with findings that exceeded even my most optimistic expectations. The report detailed systematic violations of environmental regulations spanning 3 years and multiple projects, with evidence of deliberate falsification of impact studies and illegal construction practices. Alex's professional world began collapsing with the swift brutality of a controlled demolition. The state environmental agency didn't just issue fines, they referred the case to the district attorney's office for potential criminal prosecution. The Martha's Vineyard Resort project was immediately shut down, with construction halted indefinitely pending a complete environmental remediation. Alex's wealthy investors, who had already committed millions to the project, were suddenly facing total loss of their investments. Marcus Webb, my private investigator, reported that 3 major clients had terminated their contracts with Morrison and Associates within a week of the EPA report becoming public. His office is hemorrhaging staff, Marcus informed me during our regular briefing. The junior architects are jumping ship before their own reputations get damaged by association. But the environmental scandal was just the beginning. Using Bobby Chen's insider intelligence, I orchestrated a cascade of professional disasters that would have impressed any military strategist. Bobby had discovered that Alex had been inflating project costs by as much as 30%, charging clients for premium materials while using cheaper alternatives. Armed with this information, I contacted 3 of his largest clients anonymously, providing them with detailed breakdowns of the actual costs versus what they'd been charged. The response was swift and devastating. Harrison Industries, which had hired Alex to design their new corporate headquarters, launched an internal audit that quickly revealed they'd been overcharged by nearly $2 million. Within days, they filed a lawsuit against Morrison and Associates for fraud and breach of contract. 2 other clients followed suit, creating a cascade of legal troubles that threatened to bankrupt Alex's firm entirely. The lawsuits weren't just about money, they included allegations of professional misconduct that would be reported to the state licensing board. He stopped coming to the office regularly, Bobby reported. When he does show up, he spends most of his time on the phone with lawyers. The remaining staff are basically running the business without him. Meanwhile, Chloe's professional destruction was proceeding with equal efficiency. Using my network of industry contacts, I ensured that every major event venue in Boston received detailed information about her involvement in the anniversary party scandal. The information was presented as industry alerts about potential liability issues when working with coordinators who had documented ethics problems. The Fairmont Harbor Hotel, where our anniversary party had taken place, was the first to act. They quietly removed Chloe from their preferred vendor list and began declining to book events she was coordinating. Other prestigious venues quickly followed suit, effectively blacklisting her from the high-end market that had been her specialty. Lionel Matthews continued his undercover work, now posing as a vendor interested in partnering with event coordination firms. His reconnaissance revealed that Chloe's business was in complete free fall. She's had to lay off her entire full-time staff, Lionel reported. She's working with freelancers now, but even they're starting to refuse jobs because she can't guarantee payment. Her office lease is 3 months behind, and the landlord is threatening eviction. The psychological impact on both targets was becoming evident through my surveillance network. Maria reported that Alex had moved into the guest bedroom of our Beacon Hill house, apparently unable to sleep in the master bedroom where he'd once planned his betrayal. He was drinking heavily, often passing out on the couch with empty bottles scattered around him. He talks to himself now, Maria texted me with accompanying photos of Alex looking disheveled and defeated, muttering about how everything is falling apart and he doesn't understand how it happened so fast. Chloe's deterioration was even more dramatic. Sarah Blackwood, now fully invested in tracking the gossip, reported that Chloe had been seen at various bars around the city, apparently drowning her sorrows and complaining loudly to anyone who would listen about how unfair her situation was. She keeps saying that one mistake shouldn't destroy her entire career, Sarah told me during another accidental encounter. But people aren't very sympathetic. I mean, having an affair with your best friend's husband isn't exactly a small mistake. The most satisfying development was learning that Alex and Chloe's relationship had become openly toxic. The financial pressures and professional disasters had stripped away any pretense of romance, revealing their affair for what it truly was, mutual selfishness disguised as love. Marcus captured audio recordings of one of their arguments outside a downtown law office where they'd been meeting with attorneys. The conversation revealed the depth of their mutual resentment. "This is all your fault," Chloe screamed at Alex. "You said you had everything under control, that your business was solid. Now I'm losing everything because I believed your lies." Alex's response was equally bitter. "My lies? You're the one who insisted on that dramatic announcement at the party. You couldn't just let me handle it quietly. You had to make a show of it, and now look where we are." The irony was perfect. They were blaming each other for the very actions that had led to their downfall, completely unaware that their destruction was being orchestrated by someone who understood their weaknesses better than they understood themselves. But I wasn't finished. The professional destruction was just phase 2 of a much longer campaign. Alex's licensing board review was still pending, Chloe's remaining clients were still receiving anonymous warnings about her reliability, and both of them were about to discover that their troubles had only just begun. After all, destroying their careers was satisfying, but destroying their entire lives would be truly poetic justice. 2 months after the anniversary party, I launched the most devastating phase of my campaign. The systematic elimination of Alex and Chloe's social standing in Boston's interconnected elite circles. Their professional lives were already in ruins, but their social connections represented their last remaining source of support and potential recovery. It was time to sever those connections permanently. My first target was the Beacon Hill Social Club, an exclusive organization where Alex had been a member for 5 years. The club prided itself on maintaining the highest standards of character and discretion among its membership. Members who brought scandal or disrepute to the organization were quietly encouraged to resign before facing the humiliation of formal expulsion. I arranged for the club's membership committee to receive a comprehensive dossier documenting Alex's environmental violations, fraud allegations, and the very public nature of his marital infidelity. The package included newspaper clippings about the EPA investigation, court documents from the fraud lawsuits, and social media screenshots from the anniversary party scandal. The information was presented as coming from concerned members who felt the club's reputation might be damaged by association with someone facing criminal charges. Within a week, Alex received a formal letter suggesting he might want to consider resigning his membership to avoid an uncomfortable review process. Marcus Webb reported that Alex's reaction to the club's rejection was particularly devastating. "He's been a member there since he graduated college," Marcus observed. "It was where he networked with his wealthiest clients, where he felt he belonged among Boston's elite. Losing that membership is like losing his identity." Chloe's social destruction required a more nuanced approach, since her professional and social circles overlapped significantly. I focused on the Junior League of Boston, where she had served on the board for 3 years and had been hoping to become president the following year. Using Lionel's continued undercover work, I discovered that Khloe was already facing whispered criticism from other board members about the anniversary party scandal. Many felt that her public involvement in breaking up a marriage reflected poorly on the organization's commitment to community service and moral leadership. I provided these concerned board members with additional ammunition, documented evidence of Khloe's recent business failures, reports of her increasingly erratic behavior, and testimony from vendors she'd failed to pay for previous Junior League events. The picture that emerged was of someone whose personal and professional problems made her unfit for leadership responsibilities. The Junior League board voted unanimously to remove Khloe from her position, citing conduct unbecoming and failure to maintain the organization's standards of excellence. The decision was announced at their monthly meeting, with Khloe present to hear her public humiliation read aloud to the assembled membership. Sarah Blackwood, who attended the meeting, reported that Khloe broke down completely. She started crying right there in front of everyone, Sarah told me with barely concealed satisfaction. Then she started screaming about how unfair it all was, how she was being persecuted for following her heart. Security had to escort her out. But my most effective social destruction came through targeting their remaining friendships systematically. I identified the key people in their social network, the couples who still occasionally invited them to gatherings, the friends who hadn't completely written them off despite the scandal. For each of these relationships, I crafted specific interventions designed to accelerate the natural social isolation that follows public disgrace. Sometimes this meant ensuring that embarrassing information reached the right ears at the right time. Other times, it involved creating situations where Alex and Khloe's increasingly toxic relationship would be on full display. The breakthrough came when I learned through Maria that Alex and Khloe were planning to attend a charity gala together, their first public appearance as a couple since the anniversary party. It was clearly an attempt to rehabilitate their image and show that their relationship had survived the initial scandal. I arranged for several key attendees to receive anonymous previews of what they could expect if Alex and Khloe appeared at the event. The information included recent photographs of Alex in various states of intoxication, audio recordings of their public arguments, and detailed accounts of their financial troubles and legal problems. The effect was immediate and comprehensive. 3 major sponsors threatened to withdraw their support if Morrison and Associates had any connection to the event. The charity's board hastily rescinded Alex's invitation, citing concerns about potential disruptions to their fundraising efforts. Khloe, having bought an expensive dress and arranged professional styling for what she'd hoped would be their triumphant return to society, was devastated by the last-minute exclusion. Lionel reported overhearing her phone call with the event organizers, where she begged them to reconsider and promised there would be no drama. "I'm sorry, Ms. Bennett," the organizer reportedly said, "but the board feels that your presence might overshadow the charitable mission of the evening. Perhaps next year, when things have settled down." The social isolation was now complete. Alex and Khloe found themselves excluded from every gathering, uninvited to every event, and avoided by every former friend. Their names had become synonymous with scandal and poor judgment. Even people who had initially been sympathetic to their love story now crossed the street to avoid awkward conversations. The psychological impact was devastating. Maria reported that Alex had stopped leaving the house except for lawyer meetings and court appearances. Khloe had moved back in with her elderly mother, unable to afford her apartment rent and too embarrassed to face her former social circles. Most importantly, their relationship was crumbling under the pressure of complete social exile. Without the excitement of secret meetings and the validation of external admirers, they were discovering that they genuinely disliked each other. The grand romance that had justified destroying my marriage was revealing itself to be nothing more than mutual selfishness and sexual attraction. The social destruction campaign had achieved everything I'd hoped for and more. Alex and Khloe weren't just facing professional and financial ruin, they were experiencing the complete collapse of their identities as successful, respected members of Boston society. They had become cautionary tales, examples of how quickly a life could unravel when built on lies and betrayal. The love story that had destroyed my marriage began its final, spectacular implosion on a rainy Tuesday evening. In late September, Marcus Webb's surveillance team captured the entire breakdown on video outside Khloe's mother's house in Brookline, where she'd been forced to move after losing her apartment. The footage showed Alex arriving in his BMW, now his only remaining asset after the lawsuits had frozen most of his accounts, clearly intoxicated and furious. Khloe met him at the front door, and their argument immediately escalated to screaming that could be heard 3 houses away. "You promised me everything would be fine." Khloe's voice carried clearly through the expensive recording equipment Marcus had positioned across the street. "You said your business was solid, that we'd be able to weather any scandal. Look at us now, I'm living with my 70-year-old mother and you're facing criminal charges. Alex's response revealed the depth of his own desperation and self-pity. I never asked you to plan that ridiculous slideshow stunt. You could have waited, could have let me handle the divorce quietly. But no, you had to make it dramatic, had to humiliate her in public. Now everyone thinks we're monsters. The argument continued for nearly an hour, with each of them blaming the other for every aspect of their downfall. The passionate lovers who had once sneaked around behind my back were now revealing their true characters under pressure, selfish, petty, and completely incapable of taking responsibility for their choices, but the most devastating revelation came when their argument turned to money. Marcus's audio equipment captured every word of their financial recriminations. I gave up everything. For you, Chloe sobbed. My business, my reputation, my friends. And for what? You can't even pay for a decent lawyer, let alone support both of us while we figure this out. Support you? Alex's laugh was bitter and cruel. You never needed me to support you. You wanted me because I was successful, because being with me elevated your social status. Well, congratulations, now we're both nothing. The fight ended when Chloe's mother appeared at the door in her bathrobe, demanding that Alex leave before she called the police. The sight of this once powerful man being ordered away by an elderly woman in fuzzy slippers was captured in perfect detail by Marcus's team. Over the following weeks, I watched their relationship deteriorate with the methodical precision of a scientist observing a controlled experiment. Each new pressure I applied revealed more cracks in their foundation, more evidence that their affair had been built on fantasy rather than genuine compatibility. Maria continued providing insider intelligence from our Beacon Hill house, where Alex was now living alone in increasingly squalid conditions. He doesn't clean anymore, she reported. Empty bottles everywhere, dirty clothes, spoiled food. He talks to himself constantly, practicing speeches for his lawyers or rehearsing conversations with Ms. Chloe that never go well. The psychological profiles I'd developed during my intelligence gathering phase proved remarkably accurate. Alex's identity crisis was complete. Without his professional success and social standing, he had no sense of who he was or what he was worth. Chloe's need for validation and admiration left her completely adrift when their social circle turned against them. Their attempts to maintain their relationship became increasingly desperate and dysfunctional. Sarah Blackwood reported seeing them together at low-end restaurants and dive bars, a stark contrast to the upscale venues where they'd once conducted their affair. They look miserable together, Sarah observed with the keen eye of a trained gossip. No chemistry, no intimacy. Just two desperate people clinging to each other because they have nowhere else to go. The final break came during what should have been a romantic reconciliation dinner at a modest Italian restaurant in the North End. Lionel Matthews, maintaining his cover as a networking event coordinator, happened to be dining at the same establishment when their relationship imploded publicly. She accused him of never really loving her, Lionel reported with barely contained excitement. Said he'd just been using her as an escape from his boring marriage. He fired back that she'd pursued him specifically because he was married, that the thrill of stealing someone else's husband was what had really attracted her. The argument escalated until other diners began recording the spectacle on their phones. Alex stormed out, leaving Chloe alone at the table with a check she couldn't afford to pay. The restaurant manager had to hold her purse while she called her mother for rescue. By October, their separation was complete and permanent. Alex filed a restraining order after Chloe appeared at the house demanding money she claimed he owed her. Chloe retaliated by contacting Alex's remaining clients with stories about his drinking problem and emotional instability. The grand romance that had justified destroying my marriage lasted exactly 6 months from public revelation to final collapse. The passionate lovers who had believed their connection was worth any sacrifice had learned the hard truth about relationships built on betrayal. They inevitably destroy everyone involved, including the betrayers themselves. Marcus's final surveillance report on their relationship included a photograph that perfectly captured their downfall. Alex sitting alone in his car outside a liquor store at 2 p.m. on a Wednesday, while Chloe was simultaneously visible through the window of a nearby coffee shop, crying into her phone while begging someone, probably a former client, for work. They had achieved their dream of being together. They just hadn't anticipated that together would mean equally destroyed, equally alone, and equally hated by everyone who had once respected them. The love story was over. Now it was time for the final chapter of their education in consequences. The ripple effects of Alex and Chloe's destruction spread far beyond their immediate circle, touching the lives of family members, business associates, and innocent bystanders who had the misfortune of being connected to them. Like a virus spreading through a social network, their disgrace infected everyone they'd ever claimed to care about. Alex's parents, Margaret and William Morrison, had built their retirement social calendar around their son's success. They'd been prominent members of the country club, regular attendees at charity galas, and proud participants in Boston's architectural community events. Now, at 72 and 75 respectively, they found themselves social pariahs by association. Margaret Morrison's Bridge Club, where she'd been a member for 15 years, quietly suggested she might be more comfortable taking a temporary break from regular games. The women who had once competed to host dinner parties featuring the Morrisons and their successful architect son now avoided eye contact at the grocery store. Mrs. Morrison looks 20 years older, Maria reported. After encountering Alex's mother at our neighborhood market. She was buying store-brand everything, looked like she was counting every dollar. She asked about you, said she was sorry for what her son did. She started crying right there in the cereal aisle. The financial impact on Alex's parents was devastating. They had invested their retirement savings in his Martha's Vineyard project, trusting their son's professional judgment. When the environmental violations shut down construction, they lost everything. Their comfortable golden years had become a nightmare of financial insecurity and social humiliation. Alex's younger brother Marcus, who shared his name with my private investigator, faced his own professional crisis. As a junior architect at a competing firm, he found himself constantly defending his family name and assuring clients that he had no connection to his brother's unethical practices. Every meeting starts with clients asking if I'm related to that Morrison, Marcus confided to Bobby Chin during an industry networking event. I'm thinking about changing my last name professionally. 8 years of building my reputation. And Alex destroyed it all in 6 months. Chloe's family suffered equally devastating consequences. Her younger sister Sasha, a school teacher who had always looked up to Chloe's glamorous lifestyle, found herself fielding uncomfortable questions from colleagues and parents who recognized the family name from news coverage of the anniversary party scandal. Parents are requesting their children be moved out of my classroom, Sasha told their elderly mother during a conversation Lionel overheard at a coffee shop near the school. They don't trust my judgment or moral character because of what Chloe did. 20 years of teaching, and now I'm being treated like a criminal. Chloe's mother, Eleanor Bennett, became a prisoner in her own home as neighbors whispered and pointed whenever she appeared in public. The woman who had raised her daughter to be a lady who made smart choices now faced daily reminders of how spectacularly that guidance had failed. The professional collateral damage was equally extensive. Morrison and Associates employed 12 people before the scandal broke. As Alex's business collapsed under legal troubles and client defections, each of those employees faced unemployment. In an industry where association with fraud made them virtually unemployable, Jenny Walsh, Alex's office manager for 5 years, was particularly devastating to watch fall. She'd been completely innocent of any wrongdoing but found herself blacklisted by other architectural firms who worried about hiring anyone connected to the Morrison scandal. She has 2 kids in college, Bobby reported. 23 years in the industry, spotless reputation, and now she can't even get interviews because people recognize her name from the Morrison and Associates lawsuit coverage. Chloe's former employees faced similar professional exile. Event planning was a relationship-based business where reputation was everything. Having worked for Chloe Bennett on a resume became a liability rather than an asset. Even businesses that had simply provided services to Alex and Chloe found themselves caught in the undertow of their destruction. The Riverside Hotel, where they'd conducted much of their affair, requested that news outlets stop mentioning the establishment in connection with the scandal after several wedding bookings were cancelled. The general manager approached me personally, reported Marcus Webb, who had been monitoring the situation. They're considering legal action to distance themselves from the coverage. Apparently, being known as the hotel where the Morrison affair happened isn't great for their brand. The social clubs, charitable organizations, and professional associations that had expelled Alex and Chloe were forced to examine their own membership more carefully. The scandal had revealed how easily fraudulent and unethical people could infiltrate respected institutions. The Beacon Hill Social Club implemented new background check procedures for prospective members. The Junior League of Boston created an ethics committee to review the conduct of current board members. Even the Massachusetts Architecture Board strengthened their professional misconduct policies, but perhaps the most tragic collateral damage was suffered by the few people who had genuinely cared about Alex and Chloe. These friends and family members found themselves mourning not just the relationships they'd lost, but the people they thought Alex and Chloe were. I keep thinking about all the conversations we had, Sarah Blackwood confided during one of our chance encounters. All the times Chloe complained about women who cheated on their husbands, all her lectures about loyalty and friendship. I feel stupid for believing any of it. The Alex and Chloe who had destroyed my marriage weren't just revealed to be adulterers, they were revealed to be complete fabrications. The charming architect and elegant event planner had been carefully constructed personas hiding selfish, destructive personalities. Their families, friends, and associates weren't just dealing with the shock of betrayal, they were grieving the death of people who had never really existed. The Alex and Chloe they'd loved and trusted were as much victims of this scandal as anyone else, because those versions of them had been lies from the beginning. As I watched this wave of destruction spread through Boston's interconnected social and professional networks, I felt a complex mixture of satisfaction and sadness. Justice was being served, but innocent people were paying prices they'd never deserved to pay. By November, the financial catastrophe I had orchestrated reached its devastating crescendo. Alex and Chloe's material world, the luxury cars, designer clothes, and upscale lifestyles that had defined their identities, crumbled like a house of cards in a hurricane. Alex's BMW, his prized possession and symbol of professional success, was repossessed on a Thursday morning while he sat in a downtown coffee shop meeting with his bankruptcy attorney. Marcus Webb's surveillance team captured the entire humiliating scene, Alex running out of the cafe in panic, arguing with the tow truck driver, and finally standing helplessly on the sidewalk as his car disappeared around the corner. He actually broke down crying, Marcus reported with clinical detachment. Right there on Boylston Street, in full view of everyone. A homeless man offered him a tissue. The repossession was just the beginning. Morrison and Associates' assets had been frozen as part of the fraud litigation, leaving Alex with no access to business accounts that had once contained over $3 million. His personal accounts were rapidly depleted by legal fees, with his criminal defense attorney alone charging $500 per hour. The Beacon Hill house, our former home that had witnessed so many of their secret planning sessions, became the center of a complex legal battle. While I had legitimate claims to half the property value, Alex's creditors were circling like vultures, demanding payment for defaulted loans and lawsuit settlements. Maria provided daily reports on the house's deteriorating condition as Alex struggled to maintain a property he could no longer afford. The heat is turned off, she texted with photos of frost forming on the inside of windows. He's living in just the kitchen and one bedroom, using space heaters. The rest of the house is like an icebox. The mortgage payments, nearly $8,000 monthly, became impossible to sustain. Alex tried desperately to sell the property, but the scandal had made our address toxic to potential buyers. Real estate agents wouldn't return his calls after discovering the connection to the anniversary party incident and environmental fraud cases. No one wants to buy a house that's been all over the news for marital scandals and criminal investigations, reported Jennifer Walsh, a real estate attorney I'd consulted about protecting my interests in the property. Even if they could get past the publicity, the legal complications make it nearly impossible to get clear title. Chloe's financial destruction followed a different but equally devastating trajectory. Her event planning business, Prestige Events, had been her primary source of income and her pathway to Boston's elite social circles. Without clients or income, she couldn't afford the luxury apartment that had been her pride and joy. Lionel Matthews documented her pathetic attempts to liquidate her possessions through estate sales and online auctions. Designer handbags that had cost thousands sold for hundreds. Her professional wardrobe, carefully curated over years to project success and sophistication, was auctioned off piece by piece to pay basic living expenses. She's selling everything, Lionel reported after attending one of her estate sales. I watched her cry while people haggled over a Hermes scarf that probably cost her $3,000. Someone bought it for $45. The most symbolic destruction came when Chloe was forced to sell her engagement ring from her previous marriage, a ring she'd kept as a reminder of her ability to attract successful men. The 5-carat diamond that had once represented her value in the marriage market became just another asset to be liquidated for rent money. Both Alex and Chloe filed for bankruptcy within weeks of each other, their financial filings revealing the complete scope of their downfall. Alex's debts totaled over $4 million, including legal settlements, environmental cleanup costs, and defaulted business loans. His assets were listed as 2019 Honda Civic financed and clothing and personal effects of minimal value. Chloe's bankruptcy filing was equally stark. The woman who had once coordinated million-dollar events now claimed assets of less than $15,000, most of it consisting of furniture from her mother's house. Her debts included defaulted office rent, unpaid vendor bills, and credit cards maxed out during her desperate attempts to maintain appearances. The psychological impact of this financial devastation was captured perfectly in a confrontation Marcus's team recorded outside the bankruptcy court. Alex and Chloe encountered each other in the courthouse lobby, both there for their respective proceedings. "Look at us," Chloe said, her voice hollow with despair. "6 months ago we were planning our future together. Now we're both filing for bankruptcy on the same day. Alex's response revealed how thoroughly their shared destruction had poisoned any remaining affection between them. Maybe if you hadn't insisted on that public spectacle at the anniversary party, we could have handled the divorce quietly. But no, you had to make it dramatic. Now we're both ruined. Don't you dare blame me for this, Chloe shot back. Your business was built on fraud long before I came along. I just gave you an excuse to finally face the consequences of your choices. The argument continued until courthouse security intervened, but the damage was done. Two people who had once believed their love was worth destroying my marriage now couldn't stand to be in the same room without attacking each other. The financial destruction was complete. Alex and Chloe had gone from wealthy, successful professionals to bankrupt social outcasts in less than 8 months. They'd lost their homes, their cars, their businesses, and their life savings. Most importantly, they'd lost any hope of recovering the lifestyles that had defined their identities. But there was one final humiliation waiting for them, one last lesson about the true cost of betrayal. Because while they'd been focused on their financial survival, I'd been planning something that would ensure their story ended exactly as it deserved. The knock on my Cambridge apartment door came at exactly 9:47 p.m. on a cold December evening, 8 months after the anniversary party that had changed everything. Through the security monitor, I watched Alex huddle in the hallway, his appearance so dramatically altered that I almost didn't recognize him. Gone was the confident architect who had once commanded boardrooms and charmed wealthy clients. The man outside my door wore a threadbare winter coat over clothes that clearly came from a discount store. His face was gaunt, aged by stress and alcohol, his once perfect hair now unkempt and graying at the temples. I let him wait for exactly 8 minutes, 1 minute for each year of our marriage that he destroyed with his lies. "Hello, Alex," I said when I finally opened the door, my voice perfectly calm and controlled. "This is unexpected." "Jane," he croaked, his voice rough from months of heavy drinking and legal stress. "Please, I need to talk to you. I know I have no right to ask, but you're absolutely right," I interrupted smoothly. "You have no right to ask for anything. But I'm curious about what could possibly bring you here. Please, come in." He followed me into the modest living room, his eyes darting around the space with obvious confusion. This wasn't the luxury he'd expected, no designer furniture, no expensive artwork, just comfortable simplicity that spoke of someone who no longer needed material possessions to define her worth. "You look good," he said awkwardly, settling into a chair that probably cost less than his former monthly wine budget. "Healthy. Happy, even." "I am happy," I replied, pouring myself a glass of wine and deliberately not offering him one. "It's amazing how peaceful life becomes when you remove toxic people from it. Now, what brings you to my home uninvited at nearly 10 o'clock on a Tuesday night?" Alex's composure, what little remained of it, began to crumble. "I know it was you," he said, his words tumbling out in a desperate rush. "The environmental investigation, the client lawsuits, the social club expulsion, all of it. You orchestrated everything." I sipped my wine thoughtfully, studying his face with the detached interest of a scientist observing a fascinating specimen. "That's quite an accusation. Do you have any evidence to support this theory?" "It's too perfect," he insisted, leaning forward with the intensity of a man who'd been obsessing over this realization for months. "Every disaster perfectly timed, every pressure point precisely targeted. The Jane I was married to for 8 years was always strategic, always 3 steps ahead. This has your fingerprints all over it." "How flattering," I said with a genuine smile. "You're giving me credit for an extraordinary level of competence. Though I have to ask, if you truly believe I'm capable of such sophisticated planning, why did you think cheating on me was a good idea?" His face flushed with anger and embarrassment. "This isn't a game, Jane. My life is destroyed. My career, my reputation, my family, everything is gone. Chloe won't even speak to me anymore. I'm living in a studio apartment in Malden and working part-time at a hardware store." "A hardware store?" I repeated with mock surprise. "How humble. I hope you're learning valuable skills about building things properly. You always did have trouble with solid foundations." "Please," he begged, and I could see tears forming in his eyes. "I know I hurt you. I know what we did was wrong. But this level of destruction, it's inhuman. We made a mistake, but we don't deserve to have our entire lives annihilated." I set down my wine glass with deliberate precision, allowing the silence to stretch until Alex was visibly squirming. When I finally spoke, my voice carried the weight of 8 months of careful planning and systematic execution. "You think you made a mistake?" I asked, my tone conversational but with an edge that made him flinch. "Alex, mistakes are accidental. You planned your affair with my best friend for months. You lied to my face every single day. You used our anniversary party, a celebration of our marriage, as the stage for your grand romantic revelation. That wasn't a mistake. That was a choice. We didn't mean for it to happen, he protested weakly. You didn't mean to get caught, I corrected. There's a significant difference. You and Chloe believed you were clever enough to manipulate me indefinitely. You underestimated my intelligence, my resources, and most importantly, my commitment to seeing justice done. Alex slumped in his chair, looking older than his 36 years. What do you want from me? An apology? Acknowledgement that you've won? Fine, you've won. You've destroyed both of us completely. Are you satisfied now? I studied his broken appearance. For a long moment, feeling neither triumph nor pity. Alex, you still don't understand. This was never about winning or losing. This was about consequences. You and Chloe made choices, and choices have results. I simply ensured that those results were proportionate to your actions. Proportionate, he laughed bitterly. We cheated on you, so you destroyed our entire lives. How is that proportionate? You didn't just cheat on me, I said, my voice growing colder. You systematically lied to me for months. You used my trust against me. You plotted with my best friend to humiliate me publicly. You treated our marriage like a joke and our shared life like something disposable. So yes, I treated your lives as disposable in return. Alex stared at me with a mixture of fear and grudging respect. You're not the woman I married. No, I agreed readily. The woman you married was naive enough to trust people who didn't deserve it. She's gone, and in her place is someone who understands exactly how the world really works. You and Chloe were excellent teachers. He stood shakily, clearly realizing that no amount of pleading would change anything. What happens now? I smiled. The expression as cold and beautiful as winter moonlight. Now? Now you live with the consequences of your choices. You work at your hardware store, you live in your studio apartment, and you remember every single day that your current situation is exactly what you earned. As Alex shuffled toward the door, I called out one final time. Oh, and Alex? Give Chloe my regards when you see her. I heard she's working at a call center in Quincy now. How wonderfully authentic. The door closed behind him with a soft click, leaving me alone with my wine and the deep satisfaction of a job completed perfectly. Through the window, I watched Alex walk away into the December night, his shoulders hunched against both the cold and the weight of his completely ruined life. 8 months ago, he'd stood in a ballroom and declared his love for another woman in front of everyone I cared about. Tonight, he'd stood in my living room and finally understood the true cost of that declaration. The education was complete. 6 months after Alex's desperate midnight visit, I stood in the lobby of the Four Seasons Hotel, adjusting the collar of my navy blue power suit before walking into the conference room where Boston Business Journal was hosting their annual Women in Leadership Awards ceremony. My name was being called as this year's recipient of the Strategic Excellence Award, recognition for the innovative marketing campaign that had helped 3 struggling companies rebuild their brands after public scandals. The irony wasn't lost on me. Jane Sullivan, the presenter announced, using the maiden name I'd reclaimed after my divorce was finalized. A marketing strategist who has revolutionized crisis management through what she calls strategic narrative reconstruction. I accepted the Crystal Award with a gracious smile, looking out at an audience that included many of the same people who had witnessed my public humiliation at the anniversary party just 18 months earlier. But now they saw someone entirely different, not the betrayed wife, but the successful entrepreneur who had built something beautiful from the ashes of betrayal. My consulting firm, Phoenix Strategies, had become Boston's premier crisis management company. Wealthy clients who faced public scandals, professional disasters, or reputation emergencies paid premium rates for my expertise in rebuilding shattered lives. The skills I'd developed while systematically destroying Alex and Chloe had proven remarkably transferable to helping others recover from their own poor choices. The key to successful crisis management, I told the audience during my acceptance speech, is understanding that every ending is actually a beginning. When someone's old life becomes impossible to maintain, we help them construct something better, stronger, and more authentic. The standing ovation was genuine and sustained. These were Boston's most successful business leaders, and they recognized competence when they saw it. Several approached me afterward with business cards and requests for private consultations, but the most meaningful interaction came from an unexpected source. As I left the hotel, I encountered Margaret Morrison in the lobby, Alex's mother, looking far older than her 72 years but carrying herself with dignity despite her reduced circumstances. Jane, she said softly, approaching me with obvious hesitation. Congratulations on your award. I wanted to tell you that I'm proud of how you've rebuilt your life. I studied her face, seeing genuine remorse and exhaustion. Thank you, Mrs. Morrison. How are you managing? We're surviving, she replied with a weak smile. William found part-time work at a hardware store, the same one where Alex works, actually. It's humbling. But we're learning to live more simply. She paused, gathering courage. I want you to know that we never approved of what he did. If we'd known about the affair, you would have tried to stop it, I finished gently. I know. Alex's choices were his own, not yours. Her eyes filled with tears. He asks about you sometimes. Wonders if you're happy. I think he finally understands what he lost. I felt a surprising surge of compassion for this elderly woman who had lost her retirement security because of her son's choices. Mrs. Morrison, I am happy. Genuinely, completely happy. And I hope you and Mr. Morrison find peace as well. You deserve better than this situation. She squeezed my hand briefly before walking away, and I realized that my capacity for forgiveness had grown alongside my success. I could feel sympathy for the innocent casualties of my campaign without regretting the justice I'd delivered to those who had earned it. Later that evening, I sat in my new penthouse apartment overlooking Boston Harbor, reviewing the final reports from Marcus Webb about Alex and Chloe's current situations. The private investigator I'd hired to orchestrate their destruction now provided quarterly updates on their continued struggles, not because I needed revenge, but because understanding the full consequences of my actions felt important. Alex was still working at Morrison Hardware, having been promoted to assistant manager after demonstrating unexpected competence with customers and inventory. His criminal charges had been reduced to probation and community service in exchange for cooperation with environmental cleanup efforts. He lived quietly, attended AA meetings regularly, and had not attempted another relationship since his breakup with Chloe. Chloe had moved to Portland, Maine, where she worked as a customer service representative for a small insurance company. Her mother had followed her, and they shared a modest apartment near the harbor. According to Marcus's sources, she'd stopped drinking heavily and had begun volunteering at a women's shelter, helping other women rebuild their lives after domestic disasters. Both subjects appear to have accepted their current circumstances. Marcus's final report concluded. No evidence of attempts to return to Boston or re-establish their former lifestyles. Subject A shows signs of genuine remorse and personal growth. Subject C appears to have developed a more realistic understanding of her own limitations and responsibilities. I closed the file with a sense of completion that had nothing to do with revenge and everything to do with closure. Alex and Chloe had learned the lessons I'd set out to teach them. They understood the true cost of betrayal, the value of honesty, and the importance of building lives on authentic foundations rather than lies and manipulation. Most importantly, I had learned something even more valuable about myself. The woman who had stood humiliated at her anniversary party had possessed capabilities she'd never imagined. The strategic mind that had once sold products could architect the complete reconstruction of reality itself. I'd built my new life not as a reaction to their betrayal, but as a response to my own potential. Phoenix Strategies wasn't just a business, it was a philosophy. Every ending could become a beginning, every destruction could become creation, every betrayal could become the foundation for something stronger and more beautiful. The last entry in my personal journal that night was simple: the student has become the teacher. The phoenix has risen. The woman they tried to destroy has become the woman who helps others rise from their own ashes. Justice had been served. Life had been rebuilt. The story was complete and more beautiful. The last personal journal that night was simple: the student has become the teacher. The phoenix has from their own ashes.